China's influence was felt in both Korea and Japan, whose governments tried to consciously incorporate similar economic policies. In regard to landholding, these governments tried for a few centuries, roughly between 600 and 900 AD, to allocate land from the government specifically to family owners or tenants in exchange for tax obligations or public services, such as providing troops. However, the increase in agricultural productivity and increasing trade meant that successful landowners could produce vast wealth by trading excess crops or supporting industrial activities. These successful individuals tended to purchase failing farms, gradually increasing their holdings. Eventually, their immense amount of resources brought them political influence. This influence tended to lessen the government's ability to tax these same people effectively. By 900, the government's hold on land ownership had pretty much disappeared. It became more productive for states to tax individuals directly and perhaps the sale of goods when they were sold. Land taxes didn't go away. In fact, the percentages actually increased. But landowners found ways of hiding their ownership or getting around the taxes. For instance, they could donate land to a monastery, which didn't pay taxes, and then lease the land back from the monastery at a very small rent, much smaller than the taxes they would have paid. Taxes on small land holdings were usually lower than those on plantations. This enabled small farmers to continue. But large farm owners could use tenant farming as a way to avoid taxes. They could divide their land into smaller tracts for tax purposes. These small holdings paid the lower rate, but they still actually farmed this land as a single plantation using the sharecroppers. This also meant that they could develop the sharecroppers into large groups of dependents, often several villages at a time. These developments were directly linked to the emergence of warrior elites controlling regions in both Japan and Korea. While the economic systems were more advanced in East Asia, the impact of this fragmentation is very similar to feudalism in medieval Europe. Just as lords maintained knights in villages in Western Europe, daimyo maintained samurai in villages in Japan. Just as in Europe, elite nobles often wanted a symbolic figurehead at the top of their state. For example, a king or an emperor. This figurehead was ideally charged with settling disputes and maintaining the equality among the elite warrior group. This is very similar to what Hammurabi did in his law code so much earlier. But these figureheads could often be at the mercy of one or two families of nobles who ended up controlling key lands or wealth. Such situations often led to war.